It's hard not to talk about the current Heat versus Knicks Eastern Conference semifinal series and not think of the past matchups between the two teams. One of the central figures of the Heat-Knicks battles of the 1990s is Knicks center Patrick Ewing. Fox Sports reporter and play-by-play announcer John Fanta talked to Ewing before the 2023 series. And John, he joins me now for a trip down memory lane. John, how's it going, man?
It's great to be with you, Dexter. Thanks so much for having me. And yes, this series has so many layers to it because the rivalry defined a segment of the NBA in the late 90s. And yeah, it might be 25 years ago, but it was pretty clear to me Patrick Ewing has these memories fresh in his brain.
Yeah, as a lot of Knicks fans do too, and Heat fans, both have these memories fresh into their brain. So let's get right into it, John, because Ewing, while you mentioned he's far removed from those 90s battles, what is etched in his memory about those series? What's at the forefront that he thinks about when he thinks about Knicks Heat in the 90s?
Well, I asked Ewing on Saturday when we talked, I said, so Patrick, what's the biggest memory that comes to mind with Knicks Heat? And he said, well, that's an easy question. We beat them more than they beat us. And that was just Patrick Ewing being Patrick Ewing. But he looks back at 97, and he wonders, like many Knicks fans, of what could have been with that New York team. That when the Knicks are positioned up 3-1 in that 1997 Eastern Conference semifinal series, and the Heat are about to win in Game 5, Charlie Ward, P.J. Brown getting into a scuffle that leads to P.J. Brown throwing Charlie Ward out of bounds and into a row of photographers. And Ewing did leave the bench along with a couple other Knicks players, and that led David Stern to handing down the most harsh penalty that we had seen at that time with those suspensions. Ewing looked at that suspension, and he still to this day says he doesn't feel it was fair. He doesn't feel it was fair. He didn't feel it then. He doesn't feel it now. And he said, I wasn't involved in that skirmish. It didn't make any sense back then. Yes, he left the bench, but 97 to him still stings because that skirmish is something that makes him think that if that didn't happen, the Knicks were going to win that series. They were going to go to the Eastern Conference Finals, and he felt they could have won the NBA title.
Yeah, I think a lot of people felt like they had a good shot against the Bulls that year. So that's etched in the forefront of his mind there. And New York had a 3-1 series lead, 5 players suspended, as John mentioned, and the whole thing. How much does that really bother him? Because you talked about it, it really stings for him and a lot of Knicks fans. How much does that still bother him? Is that sort of the defining thought when he thinks about Knicks Heat battles? Is that the first thing that comes to mind, that we didn't get the job done in 1997?
Yeah, it really bothers Ewing. It really bothers him. And I thought that was interesting because Patrick did say, look, it happened a quarter century ago, but I think he knows what the rep is in New York, and that is, look, he could never win the world championship. And so because of that eats at his heart. It really does. And it makes him feel personal about it because he felt like in that instance that the league holding him out for a game and then holding out a couple of other Knicks players as that series continued between John Starks and Larry Johnson, Allen Houston as well, who were involved, that really hampered the Knicks from winning that series and hampered Ewing from getting the big one. It bothers Patrick that he could never deliver the championship for New York. He wanted that in the worst way. And he is New York, true blue, to a T. Like I said to you earlier, Dexter, he looks at the end of the day, he looks at 1998, he looks at 1999, he looks at Allen Houston's floater, the game winner. He has a lot of good memories. He said the hardest he's ever laughed was when Jeff Van Gundy was clinging at Alonzo Mourning's leg.
Yeah.
But it does bother him that in 1997, he feels a series got taken from him in what could have been a championship run. He loves New York with a burning passion, and he wanted to deliver that title. And that's why it remains so fresh a quarter century later.
Yeah, it's amazing how you can have all those other good memories, right? All those other positives, but still the one that got away, that's the one that sticks in the forefront of Ewing's mind. Lastly, John, we saw Ewing back at MSG for Game 1 this series that was going on. What does the Hall of Fame center think of this current Knicks squad, this renewed rivalry, if there is one, with the Heat? And does he think that the Knicks can win this series?
He absolutely believes the Knicks can win this series, and he loves this Knicks squad. He says it takes him back to his days as a player, that the Knicks don't have Kevin Durant or Steph Curry, Dexter. But what they do have is a toughness factor, and that's something that Patrick Ewing appreciates. It's why he was in the building on Sunday, returning to the Garden and checking out his New York Knicks, because they remind him of the teams that he was on. He has been a huge fan of Jalen Brunson for a long time. He loves the way that Brunson goes about his business. Remember, Patrick was the head coach at Georgetown before getting let go after this past season, but he coached against Jalen Brunson. He's had a deep appreciation for Josh Hart, those Villanova guys, because he saw them in the Big East, and he said they just grind it out. They figure out ways to win. The Knicks play a certain style. When they've been their most successful, they've played this gritty, gutsy, tough-minded, hard-nosed style. And it's something that Ewing appreciates. And I think what he loves the most is that they're a no-excuses team. Julius Randle's battled this injury. Ewing told me he loves the fact that the Knicks have not let that become the story, that Randle adds a different dimension to this Knicks team, but that they just kept on fighting. They kept on going after Cleveland, and that's how they advanced in this playoffs. So, to me, Ewing really appreciates this Knicks team, and I think that's why you saw him courtside on Sunday, to get back to the Garden for a big game, in a place and for a team that he loves dearly, and a team that he sees some qualities from his playing days.
Yeah, he definitely sees that. Loves the Knicks dearly. Knicks fans love him back. Blue and orange, everything with Patrick Ewing, and we'll see if he's in the building for Game 2. I know John Fanta will be in the building for Game 2. So will I. And we'll see if the Knicks can get a victory in Game 2 and even their series up with the Heat at 1 game apiece. Check out John's story on Patrick Ewing and taking a trip down memory lane about Knicks versus Heat on FoxSports.com. John, thank you for the time. I will see you soon. Always good to see you and talk some hoops.
Dexter, great to see you. Thanks for having me.
Anytime.